Hey everybody, it's Pastor Tim, and I'm excited to come to you with a brand new series we're calling Now You See Me. So I have a question. Have you ever been lost? Have you ever been somewhere, maybe hiking or driving, or maybe when you were younger, you got separated from your parents at a mall or in a store and you got lost, and in that time, like maybe panic set in, because everyone responds to being lost differently. There can be panic. There could be all of a sudden like, I can't believe I'm lost, and there's some shame, or I'm so stupid. How did I get so lost? I know sometimes I've been driving around trying to follow Siri's directions and it's just a disaster. But here's the idea, is that being lost is the absolute worst feeling ever. It's the worst feeling ever. And if you haven't been lost, you will eventually experience it. You know, the Bible talks about it talks in the New Testament about three different people who are groups that were lost. And but I'm going to talk about one of them this today. And so here's where the story starts. And if you've been in church any time, you've heard of these two names, Adam and Eve, right? You've heard these terms. You see, Adam and Eve had this perfect relationship with God. It was perfect unity. They didn't have to go to God like we do sometimes in our prayers and like, God, I need this, and can you do this, and blah, blah, blah. Like, they didn't do any of that, right? They just knew, because they were in community. They were communing in a perfect relationship with God. And they would walk with God, and they would talk with God, and they had this incredible perfect relationship between the three of them, and it was wonderful. But eventually, as you probably know, Adam and Eve broke the one rule that God had asked them not to do. God had asked them not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And by doing so, they literally were telling God, like, your rules, you're not good enough. We got this. And all of a sudden, it broke this relationship. I don't know about you, but if you've been in a relationship where someone has just broken your trust, you're just shattered, the bond has been broken. I have, and it's devastating. And that's kind of what was happening in that moment with Adam and Eve and God. They'd said, you're not good enough. We're going to do our own thing. We know better. And as soon as they ate the fruit, as soon as they made that decision, here's what's happening. Here's what ends up happening. Let me read it to you. It's in Genesis 3, starting in verse 7. Let me read it to you. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together, and they made themselves loincloths. That's basically clothes, right? The coverings, right? And so the second these guys broke that famous rule, they all of a sudden began to hear a voice in their head, and that's called the voice of shame and guilt. All of a sudden they were like, oh my gosh, we're naked. And they were looking at you like, what in the world? We gotta cover ourselves up. And here's what happens in our own lives with that voice of shame. They're better than me. She's prettier than I am. They're a better athlete. They're smarter. I'm not as good. And that voice of shame will start to whisper things that God never intended you to think or feel. That was happening with Adam and Eve. They covered themselves. They realized that they were exposed for the very first time because it wasn't an issue, but now it was. And that voice of shame began. Because since the beginning, and that idea of disobeying God, here's what happens. We are all born with a sickness, a disease that the Bible calls sin. And there's nothing we can do about it. We're born with it, and it is just our state that we're in. And here's what it looks like. Here's what that sin looks like. Lust, anger, unjust anger. It looks like cheating. It looks like murder. It looks like lying. It looks like a number of, just a myriad of things in our lives, right? And it's just a symptom. Those things are a symptom of our body communicating that there is something wrong in humanity. There's something wrong when we feel these things, because that's not a byproduct of something good. That's because the byproduct of sin. And Paul tells us in Romans chapter 3, verse 23, he says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Paul's saying because of Adam and Eve, we are all lost. Right, we talked about a minute ago. We're all lost. We have no idea where in the world we're going. Everyone is trying to navigating blindly through life and trying to, hey, try this and try that, and just like we're lost. Like when we're trying to follow Siri and it's leading you crazy, we're lost. And so what do? Well, we look for signs. You're driving along. I'm lost. Hey, that looks like where I want to go. Hey, I think I need to go that way. And we take these exits. We take these off-ramps. And maybe what we're chasing in our life, those off-ramps are the popularity. Maybe we're chasing popularity. And we think that'll take us home. Maybe we'll take the exit of relationships and thinking that next person is going to give me the love that I need and desire. Maybe it's success. I'm going to go after success and money. And I'm going to take that off-ramp. I'm going to take that exit because it's going to lead to happiness. And I'm going to feel good about myself. But here's the thing. None of these exits lead to anything good long term. They're not bad in and of themselves, but when they become our focus and that's what's guiding us, that's what has our gaze, our direction, they're just distractions. You'll be fighting for popularity your entire life. You'll be jumping into relationships, and eventually that honeymoon period will be over and reality will set in. And in the success, you're just going to be chasing the next thing and the next money, the next possession, all those different things. And you will never, ever feel satisfied or alive, but yet we'll go after those wins just to feel good about ourselves. And when that doesn't satisfy us, then we do the next best thing, which is really the next worst thing. And that's, we start to play the comparison game. Well, I'm doing all these things and I'm trying all these things, but at least I'm not like that person. I'm better than her. I'm better than him. And I'm this. And we start to compare. And then we'll say, I'm not so bad. I've got it put together because, I may be a mess, but that person is a hot mess, right? We start playing this comparison game. But at the end of the day, here's the facts. You and I were all hot messes. We're all a hot mess. We fall short, right? We try to do it our own way. We try to find our own way home from the shame through chasing things. And all of a sudden we got our comparison compass out. I'm better than this person. And it's all broken. It's all broken. But here, I want you to understand this. When we try, this is the worst news, and then I'm going to give you the best news. The worst news is the more we use that comparison compass and shame direction and Siri maps of shame, the more lost we become. The more lost you and I become. But here's the good news. Good news is that in our lost times, even our most lost times, we have said, I'm mad at you, God, or I'm turning my back on you, or whatever it is. Jesus, here's a fact. Jesus is always chasing after you. He's chasing after you. He is chasing after your heart. He's chasing after you because he knows that you're lost. And sometimes we hate ourselves, right? So much that we will say, there's no way God would want to spend time with me. There's no way God would want to come after me. But the Bible says that he is chasing. Imagine why Jesus would chase after the one person. He says so. Here, let me tell you the story. And it's in Luke, right? It's in Luke chapter 15. It says this, what man of you having 100 sheep, that's a lot of livestock, if he has one of them, if he loses one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost until he finds it. What you need to understand that this parable about sheep is Jesus' way of going to war with that voice of shame and guilt and comparison. That voice might whisper in your heart, in your ear, that you're insignificant and that you don't matter and no one cares about you. But Jesus is saying just the opposite. He is saying to the masses, he is saying to the world that, you know what? God hates the fact that you're lost and you're alone. And he's saying, I am here to do something about it. You matter to me. I want to spend eternity with you. But then again, that voice will creep up. Says, oh man, God's looking for you. You better watch out. If God's coming after you, he's going to punish you. He's going to rub your nose in it. He's going to put a leash on you. He's going to make it all bad. He's going to find, he's going to find that bad report card. He's going to find the way you treated so-and-so. And he's going to come down on you. He's going to let you have it. But let me read to you how Jesus continues in that story. Verse 5, and when he has found the lost sheep, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. Listen, when Jesus finds the lost, he rejoices. He doesn't celebrate your mistakes. He celebrates you've been found. He doesn't rub your nose in it. He says, I've been looking for you. Thank God I found you. I'm so excited. And we know that sometimes that road back is difficult. And he says, look, I'm not going to put a leash on you and drag you. I'm going to put you on my shoulders. Let me do the heavy lifting, he says. Let me carry you home. That's the Jesus that desperately seeks after you. Listen, I don't know about you, but when that happens, when we allow Jesus to carry us, that voice of that voice of shame and comparison and guilt gets to be really quiet. Matter of fact, that voice gets scared because it knows that God has all his intentions for you and he wants his best life for you, and it can't stand a chance against it. And so it freaks out. It freaks out. That doubt starts to go away. We begin to experience what it is to be accepted by Jesus. But listen, we have got to let go of the comparisons and start to grasp God's acceptance. So maybe you're reaching out to things right now and you're taking exits in your life that are making you more lost than you have ever been. I don't know what your story is, but I've been in those places. Well, I'll just do this. It'll be better. And those exits and those pathways lead me more astray. Here's what I want you to know. You need to start reaching upward to Jesus because he's been reaching out to you the entire time. You may be lost. You may not know what's going on, but he is reaching out to you this entire time. And you can't walk away from this moment without understanding this truth. Let me say, every one of us, one is born lost, but there's a way home. And Jesus wants to be your way home because he's the only way home. So if you don't want to be lost anymore, two things I want you to do this week. One, you need to admit that you're lost. Yeah, I'm messed up. I've been trying to do this thing on my own. I got sin in my life, and I think my way is better. I am absolutely lost. And then two, you need to just say, I'm lost, and I'm going to surrender it to Jesus. I'm going to allow Jesus to pick me up on those shoulders, do the heavy lifting, and I'm going to allow Jesus to take me home. I'm going to allow Jesus to guide my path. He's going to tell me where I need to go because he is the good shepherd, and he will lead you where you need to go to live your best life. You're giving him control. Allow him to do whatever he wants with your life. You will follow him. And when we do this, whether it's the first time you're giving your life to Jesus or the 500th time, we're coming back to him and you're saying this. I want you to know this. When you're doing this, you have that decision has eternal significance. Eternal significance. Continues on in Luke in verse 6 and 7. It says this, and when he comes home, he'll call together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost. Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over the one sinner who repents than over the 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Listen, when one person gets right with the Lord, man, all of heaven celebrates. Listen, this series is called Now You See Me. And you may have thought it's, all of a sudden like, God is seeing you for the first time. Like, God, now you see me. But it's quite the opposite. We're hoping that you now see God, maybe for the first time. And if it's not the first time, maybe it's with more clarity. But now you see me. God said, now you see me. Right? That's what this is really about. Because the fact is this, is that God has seen you since the beginning of time. His eyes have never left you. He's desired this relationship with you from the very first time. That's why this series is called Now You See Me. So now when we talk about this idea, it's actually about you seeing God. Jesus has been reaching out to you and he has seen you the entire time. The question is, will you accept his love? Will you allow him to put you on his shoulders and lead you home? Hopefully this has been a blessing, and we will see you next time.